Welcome to Asian Like Me, presented by me, Dr. Sohee Jun, the podcast for the modern Asian woman redefining what it means to thrive. I've spent years navigating the complexities of culture, family expectations, and career ambitions. Here, we have real, unfiltered conversations with incredible women who are breaking barriers, charting their own paths, and owning their power. Together, we'll dive into the wins, the lessons, and the challenges we all face. And yeah, we'll laugh. We'll share stories and drop some actionable tips to help you crush it in your own way. This is your space to feel seen, heard, and inspired. Ready to rewrite the rules? Let's drop in. So, Sheena, you and I have known each other for a few years now, and I'm really excited to be in conversation with you and to catch up and really talk about self-confidence as you are the expert in it. And I want to start by asking you, what's currently lighting you up?
Yeah, first off, thank you, Sophie, for having me as a guest on the show. It's really such an honor to be here to talk about these issues because I feel like there's still not enough resources or representation, and it's so needed. For me, what really lights up is just seeing other women soar, right? Stepping into their potential to realize their worth and like just doing amazing things. I think that's really important. And this is why representation is so important. When you see somebody that looks like you who's been able to break barriers, it just shows us what's possible. And I know not everyone agrees with that, and that's totally fine. Everyone's in their own thing. But other than that, I'm really excited about my upcoming book, Bridging the Confidence Gap, really a guide for women to step into their power, to realize their potential. Because when I wrote the book, they mentioned that according to the World Economic Forum, the earliest we'll achieve gender parity is in 2154.
Oh,
But
wow.
now it's actually gone back a little bit. Now they're saying the earliest is 2158. This not only affects Asian women, of course, it affects all women. And we really need to bridge that gap, right? And figure out how can we have more women in leadership, whether it's corporations, entrepreneurship, even government. If you look at the numbers of female government officials all over the world, the numbers are very slim. There's been reports saying when women really take things seriously, everybody wins. That's lighting me up now.
I so resonate with so much of what you shared, especially around representation, Sheena. And I want to dive into that a little bit because for me, I am not first generation. I came to the United States when I was 6, and we landed squarely in Phoenix, Arizona. Back in 1982, when I came to the States, there was no representation. Like, it probably was just me and my family for miles and miles, certainly not at the school that we attended in elementary school. Tell me, what's your story in terms of when you started to notice representation and when that became a thing for you, and a little bit about your origin story too?
Yeah, for sure. Like you, I also migrated from the Philippines to Canada in 1989. I was 7 years old. It was a big culture shock coming from a country where you all look the same and then coming to
Yeah.
Mexico, which is like a huge melting pot. And as a kid, I never saw but anybody in the media that looked like me. And so I
Mhm.
was ashamed of my own culture. I wanted to have blonde hair and blue eyes to feel more accepted. And I was literally ashamed of my Asian culture. Like I did not want to be
Oh
Asian.
my gosh, Sheena, me too. Can we just talk about this? I tried to dye my hair, tried every which way to erase my heritage.
And same, I dyed my hair blonde, and actually it wasn't until I dyed my hair back from from blonde to my original hair color. I mean, I didn't do it because of that. I did it because retouching roots ain't cheap. It's like $80 at the time to retouch roots. I don't even know what that
That's
price is now.
expensive.
Exactly, right, when it's like only like 3 inches. And so I was like, I need to stop doing this. I'm gonna go back to my original hair color. And that's when I realized I looked in the mirror and I finally felt Asian. I was proud to be Asian. I was
Mm.
proud of my culture because that's who I really was. Like I really saw myself for the first time.
Well, how was that? That's so huge. That shift that took me so much, I feel like so much longer, maybe even into like my early 20s, because I also wore the colored contacts to have blue eyes or green eyes or to just again fit in. That is such a huge shift that you're talking about, Sheena, that just what others would see as the plain act of going back to your original hair color. And that is the symbolism of you seeing yourself. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, I think just after I dyed it from my original hair color, I looked in the mirror and I just saw myself for the first time,
Mm.
like really was. And it was just a breath of fresh air. Okay, I am Asian. Like I can't hide it. This is who I am. and I'm going to embrace it. It happened in my 20s. From then on, I just embraced it. But for me, representation was still next to nothing, right? You don't see anybody. I mean, the first movie I saw that had a full Asian woman cast was like the Joy Luck,
Joy Luck Club. Yeah.
right? First TV show that had an Asian family, All American Girl with Margaret Cho. After that, it was crickets.
I know that there have been so many stories and written about this. It probably was 20 or 30 years between that until we saw Crazy Rich Asians, of which I don't know about you, but I cried when I saw that full.
Oh, I cried. I cried happy tears because I was like,
Same.
finally, a movie that represents us. It was just out of pure joy. I was like, I don't care. I'm just going to watch the movie by myself, and just bawled my eyes out of pure happiness. And then I was able to take my grandma to watch the movie as well, and just seeing them being able to understand the language and the customs. It was such a great experience.
It was. And so tell me along that journey where self-confidence became a thing for you.
In 2015, I was really dealing with my own confidence issues, and I was trying to find resources that specifically catered to Asian women. And I couldn't find any. Part of me thought I was the only one dealing with this, but of course, in Asian culture, we don't talk about the things we go through. And also, representation was really important for me. I really wanted to create a platform where Asian women can share their stories and dismantle the negative stereotypes we go through. That's when I started my podcast, The Tao of Self-Confidence, launched it in September of 2015.
Amazing.
Yeah, I had no clue what I was doing. But I knew I needed a platform to share these short stories, to showcase these stories. And in 2015, there was hardly any Asian people podcasting. There was like one guy from Los Angeles, and that was it. And so when I saw him do it, I was like, okay, well, if he's doing it, then I'm going to do it. So
Yeah.
this is why representation is so important.
Oh, Sheena, I just love, first of all, your books, The Tao of Self-Confidence and the one coming up, we'll touch on that. You know, what you're sharing is the power of just seeing someone else. But underneath that is that you have the courage and the desire to do something about it. Actually, I think Selena Rizvani is a friend of both of ours, and she says, do it afraid, of actually doing it afraid. When I look back in my own life, it's been a series of that, doing it all afraid every single time. And it sounds like that's the same for you.
Yes, I definitely do a lot of things afraid.
Yeah,
But
where do you think you get that chutzpah from? Where do you get that?
my family in the Philippines are also entrepreneurs, right? Like my great grandfather started a shipping line, and he literally started it in the worst time in the Philippines, which was martial law. So it doesn't get any more bleak than that. And he did it anyways. I'm sure he was scared. He had 12 children to feed, but he went for it. And now it's still running till today. My granduncles are running it. He's left a legacy. So you just don't know what happens when you go out there and just make it happen, right? Do it scared. And I always tell people, like, being fearless is not about having no fears. It's about having them and moving forward anyway and doing it anyway. Even some of the most well-known celebrities in the world, they still go through fear, but they utilize that fear to pump themselves up to give the best performance of their life, the best speech, just to tackle anything that they need to tackle.
Yeah, and for me, what that signifies is the mindset, which is the book that I wrote, the second book out. Everything that you just said here, it's the mindset, how you frame it, the inner narrative, and how you pump yourself up. And so tell me, let's go back to the Tao of Self-Confidence. What were you hoping to do with that book?
I think for me, it was just to have a book that talks about Asian women and what we go through. There's no real books out there that talks about it, especially trauma. Trauma is something that we go through and never talk about. We think if we trauma, then it never happened, when that's far from the truth. So having these honest conversations, these hard conversations, is so important so that we can heal and show up as our best self. My hope was for this book to be seen, to have a book that Asian women can relate to. Of course, it's not only Asian women that can relate to it. Anybody can relate to it. Everyone has gone through some form of trauma, myself included. And for, just having this book, and people who weren't Asian constantly would ask me if this book would be beneficial for non-Asians. And it's like, yes, of course. I mean, we're all human. We bleed the same color. Totally. Like, of course you can understand it, right? We still have stories that we can relate to regardless of our differences. And sometimes it felt like a broken record to keep saying it. But I get it, right? I get it. I've never written a book. It's my first time. I'm very specific, because if you were to ask Tony Robbins if he can relate to a Black man or a Latino person, people just assume he can because he's Tony Robbins and he's also a Caucasian man. But, things are different. That was something that I noticed, and I was just like, huh, interesting. So next thing, the confidence gap is for all women, right? Sharing the things we go through, the big issues and problems that we still go through to today.
Yeah, I love that. Before we go there, I want to double click into the trauma part. What are you willing to share with regard to even some of the things that you're referring to with trauma for yourself even?
Yeah, kindergarten in the Philippines for coloring outside the lines of a photo. That definitely traumatized me well into my adult life.
Oh,
I
wow.
always felt like everything I touched was an instant failure, so I resisted a lot because of
Mm.
it, and I didn't realize it stemmed through me failing kindergarten. I literally had to move to another school and redo kindergarten all over again just because I did not color within the line.
That's so
Yeah,
symbolic.
so crazy. And really, if I did the work, I was just meant to color outside the lines, just meant to do things like what our path was supposed to be like. Especially in Asian culture, we're given one path, we're supposed to follow it because that's the formula to success, not really realizing there's so many different paths out there.
Yeah. When I think about that, I remember being teased so much for not knowing English, for wearing different clothes. Nikes were established in Korea back then. So I remember wearing Nikes in line in kindergarten and being really teased because it wasn't a thing here in the US yet. And talk about like trauma around food. And food is such a cultural component. It is so tied, and it's very much how we relate in my family anyway, being South Korean, and I think it's similar for you as well. It's like, gosh, I wanted nothing to do with my food or to bring the shrimp. Now like my kids, they take it to school, and it's just so interesting to see the difference with
Yeah.
this generation and how ashamed I was.
Yeah. No, same here. Like bringing noodles was like something that was like looks icky, even though like I love noodles. But and they thought that I brought worms to school, and it's like then we get ashamed, right?
Yeah.
And we start doing things like bringing bologna sandwiches, which is gross when you think.
Agree. So it's funny how the ways that trauma has made us shapeshift, which is why I can see in that book, The Tao of Self-Confidence, what you're trying to do. I really do very much resonate with the whole ensuring that people are seen, heard, and valued. And that's what I do in the coaching of women as well. I want, similar to you, to allow people to feel seen, to feel heard. And value doesn't mean like you're right or that we're going to agree on everything, but just there's a value to the person. And so let's talk about bridging the confidence gap. It sounds like it's a much more resonant or like bigger applicability. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, bridging the confidence gap was something that I never thought I would write because I already had one book. And so it's totally fine writing one book. So when Wiley came up to me asking to write a second book, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I have a second book in me. I actually do, right? And it's talking about the challenges we still go through as women. And it's not just us, like systematic changes, of course, right? Talking about the different gaps, talking about one thing that we definitely go through, imposter syndrome, and doing a deep dive on that. And what can we do to gain more confidence? For me, self promotion is really important as women. It's really important to put ourselves out there, share the products and services that we have, being able to utilize why having more women in leadership is beneficial and how we can move forward in that leadership space. Different facts, tons of nuggets that the readers can gain from when they read the book.
Yeah, I love it. I cannot wait. Some of the topics that you touch on is so prevalent in the clients that I talk with, regardless of their nationality, their heritage, or culture. It hits women all in all areas and facets of life, especially imposter syndrome. And I know that has come up in the zeitgeist, like in the past 3 or 4 years, it's been really big. I call it just like a constellation of factors that really contribute to it. So I'm wondering, what's a really powerful strategy that anyone can start doing today to get a little bit more confident?
Yeah, I think for me, the most important is taking it step by step, right? Most people like to make big leaps to build confidence, and sometimes that doesn't work because we won't be able to hit the goal that we want. We feel actually less confident because of it, and we go down this rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to take it one step at a time, it helps us build our confidence little by little. And I always say it's the small, actionable daily steps that yield the big results. So let's say you want to write a book, because there are a lot of people want to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
Commit yourself to writing a book a page day for 365 days straight. And by the end of the year, you'll have one full book or even two smaller books, right? Because you were consistent and committed to writing a page a day.
Yeah, what's so resonant for me there is the consistency. Like any success book, Atomic Habits, anything that you see written on what makes a person quote unquote successful, it really boils down to consistency.
Yeah, consistency and just being resilient as F. You know? Like
The word girl.
people are always looking for the secret to success, and you just have to be resilient in your mission, in what you want to do, because we're going to go through pitfalls. We're going to go through challenges. Nothing comes when you manifest it, doesn't appear to your life. It's going to take work. And so if people realize that, then they know, like, this is what I'm expecting. It's going to happen. But at the same time, those things are good because it teaches us how to solve problems, find solutions, new solutions from a different perspective, and being able to relate to your clients, right? Like, I know where you've been through. I went through the same thing and I was able to come out of it. So if I'm able to come out of it, you are too. And here's a 3-step process that I did.
Oh, I
So
love that. So powerful. I'm a big fan of threes and simplification. The most beautiful things in life are super simple, and the
yeah.
things that last are simple. So I really resonate with that. It's interesting. When is Bridging the Confidence Gap coming out?
Yeah, it's coming out May. It's available for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes& and Nobles, Indigo, and every other book retailer worldwide. You can also upload a copy of your receipt, and I have some free pre-order bonuses that goes along with this. It's just an early thank you gift for pre-ordering the book. Really cool to see it at major bookstores. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that would ever happen.
I know, Sheena, that's so great.
Yeah, I remember seeing this book in Florida at the Barnes& and Nobles, and I was like, "Oh my goodness." And seeing it in New York on Fifth Avenue, and it's just so surreal to see it.
Oh, and keep going, Sheena. Again, this podcast is all about illuminating that. Like, there's so many modern Asian females doing badass stuff, and you are definitely the mold of that. Here's the thing. What would you have told yourself as a teen or as the 9-year-old that came from the Philippines to Canada? What would that be with being on this side of it and having written one really great book, another one coming out? What would you tell yourself?
I think I would tell them, like, be okay to make mistakes. Biggest mistakes can lead you to your greatest opportunity. Perfection is an illusion. Especially in Asian culture, we have to show up a certain way, be the perfect daughter, wife, sister, it's exhausting. And
Hmm.
so learning to show up more authentic, become our imperfect self, that's what I would share.
Oh my gosh, it's so powerful. You know what? Quite honestly, I'm still grappling with that. Like, it's
Me
okay.
too, don't worry. A lot of unlearning we have to do.
That is like the premise of my next book is around how do we undo some of this stuff. But I love that advice. That's part of taking risks, right? Like, it's so tied to when you take a risk, you have to be okay with making the mistakes and still moving forward, which I love. Sheena, how would you define what it means to be a modern Asian female today?
That's a great question. I think being a modern Asian female is someone who just owns their power, step into whatever path life takes them, forging their own path, being okay that what you're doing is not considered the norm, being able to be a trailblazer, doing something different, being okay that whatever you put out into the world is going to create a positive impact. So showing up as your authentic self, the good, bad, and the ugly, and not hiding behind the curtains or not hiding in our shell. That's what I think a modern Asian woman would be.
Oh, I love it. Not hiding, just being us in the biggest, boldest way possible. And you know what? I want to put a little bit more nuance to that because I think oftentimes people think, oh, to be our biggest, boldest self means that we have to be on stage or write a book. And it's not that at all. However, that looks for you is your unique path to being the boldest version of you. And that could be, hey, I'm a school teacher and I want to be the best version of that. Or I'm going to not do the lawyer, doctor track as an Asian female and actually go into a different field like organizational psychology, like I did. I think it's important to own your own power and your unique path. And Sheena, what keeps you up at night?
I think for me, what keeps me up at night is just seeing the problems we still face till today. And I'm not talking about just Asian women, like all women, right? Even especially writing Bridging the Confidence Gap, I share about traditions that really hurt women. And this is a thing, right? We all have cultural traditions that we follow, and people don't realize those cultures actually hurt us or those traditions hurt us versus helping us. And then I'm not saying all traditions are bad. Of course, there's some good ones. But we also have to question why we do the things we do, right? Like in Africa, genital mutilation is prevalent. Having periods is considered a taboo, when really that's part of being a woman. We get it every like 24 to 28 days, right? Also, you look at women in Afghanistan who aren't allowed to talk in public, show their faces, not even allowed to sing in their own homes. Like this is mid 2020s and we're still going through all this. So knowing that there's still like all these problems, I think it lights me up to figure out how can we solve this.
Yeah, those are some really, really deeply entrenched traditions. And sometimes it can feel overwhelming to even try to unpack or pull a thread on any of them. And like, I'm going to ask you a very pointed question like, what's a tradition that you think holds you back from your culture?
For me, I think just, being told to stay in the background, never make any noise, don't shame the family name. That held me back a little bit, seeking validation from my parents. That definitely held me back. Of course, If you watch Turning Red, the main character was like, my parents gave me life, they sacrificed everything, they did everything for me, and all they ever ask for is everything that they tell me to do. That really hurts us, right? Because we can't even make a decision for ourselves. We're too afraid to make the first move or the next move. And so it's really important to make decisions, even if they're bad, even if you make a mistake. At least you did it on your own and you can figure it out and pivot or correct it as we go.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that example. And for me, what I think was really damaging from a tradition standpoint is to give the utmost final say to elders. And, trust me, like I know that there's wisdom and with people that have lived longer than us and they are mentors and they've gone above and experienced things. So I get that. I think when it's too far acted upon that you give away your power to just, the authority. And for how that worked out for me in the corporate world was I stayed small. I didn't question what they said or what leaders above me said. I know that hurt me a lot in terms of progression in the workplace and promotion and not really advocating for myself because that's what my boss said to do. So I'm just going to do it. And that's also tightly coupled with being a people pleaser woman as well. And all of these factors are kind of tied together. But I do feel that in my own life, the tradition of, okay, I'm going to obey my parents, the dutiful Asian kind of tradition, really did hold me back in many ways in this Western context. What are you seeing that's a bright spot, the turnaround points?
I think women being able to speak up more, to become unapologetically themselves. I see more and more of that, which is great. Being visible. It's small steps. And I know sometimes we take one step forward and 5 steps back, but that's how change happens, right? There's going to be a lot of pushback, especially since for centuries, it's always been a certain way. And so to unlearn that will take some time. Hopefully, we get to lessen that time. But women continue to speak up, share their views, be able to be visible, then there's hope.
Yeah, and your 2 books and the next one coming out in service of helping women do that, and I'm so about that work, so thank you for putting that out in the world, and I wanna end with what is the message that you wanna leave our listeners with? What do you hope they take away from this conversation?
The one thing I want them to take away is to know their potential and capabilities, that they're more than enough to go out there and make things happen. Even if it's just very small hope, right? Like small drop of hope, it's going towards the right direction. As women, generally, not all women, as women, sometimes we don't make moves because of how we perceive ourselves. We think we're not good enough, we're not capable enough when we're more than enough. And so I want to constantly remind them that they are capable, they can make things happen, they have the potential to do great things.
Oh, I love that. Yes, preach, Sheila. Who is a guest that you think needs to be on this show?
Oh my God, there's so many. I think Michelle Yeoh would be a great guest.
Give them all.
Yeah. Or Sandra Oh. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out how to get them to, or Lisa Ling. I got to meet Lisa Ling earlier this year in LA, which was really awesome. But yeah, just having those amazing Asian women just forging the path, breaking barriers for us. I'm just truly grateful for that.
Yeah, I am too. And talk about representation. We're finally seeing so many. Yeah, let's invite Sandra Oh and Lisa Ling to this podcast and yours as well. So let's just put that out to the universe.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I have loved this conversation. I can't wait for people to get your book in 2025 in all bookstores, right? It's physical and online. And where can people have a conversation with you and connect?
Yeah, for sure. You can check out my website, sheenayapchan.com. I also am on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Website also gives you a free quiz to determine your self-confidence personality. So it's a free quiz. You get the results right away. And if you forget anything that I mentioned, like just Google my name, Sheena Yap Chan, because I'm literally the only Sheena Yap Chan on the internet.
Yay, I love it. Let's go, Sheena. Thank you so much for your time, and we will talk later. Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed my conversation today with Sheena. She is just a dynamo. And to tell you a little bit more about her, Sheena Yap Chan is a Wall Street Journal bestselling author, keynote speaker, strategist, and award-winning podcaster renowned for her expertise in elevating leadership and self-confidence through media. Her debut book that we talked about on the pod, The Tao of Self-Confidence, A Guide to Moving Beyond Trauma and Awakening the Leader Within, was published by Wiley and is a Wall Street Journal and Publishers Weekly bestseller. And Sheena is dedicated to closing the gender confidence gap through her training programs, aiming to elevate women into leadership roles across all industries. In this episode, we talked about self-confidence, about our cultural upbringing, and in particular, touched on the cultural traditions. Sheena is from the Philippines and I'm from South Korea. So we talked about our cultural traditions that we felt were barriers. And also, there are definite strengths as well, which I hope that you get to reflect on that. And I invite you to reflect on these two intentional questions that I asked Sheena, which is what's currently lighting you up? What's that thing that you're very excited about that you get all buzzy about when you think about bringing to life in 2025? And how would you define what it means to be a modern Asian female today? That's something I asked Sheena, and I am very passionate about unpacking what this looks like for each and every one of us, hence why I'm doing this podcast. And so think about that for yourself. What does it mean to be a modern Asian female today? And last but not least, if you are a voracious reader like myself, I invite you to check out two really impactful books from yours truly. The first being The Aligned Mindset, and the second one, Mommy Tracked. They're both available on Amazon and Audible. As my dear friend Selena Razvani says, the book is about the secrets of how successful women navigate work and life. And the aligned mindset is really interwoven with actual stories from my lived experience as a successful leadership coach, as a mom of three, as an entrepreneur, and as well as sharp insights from the highly ambitious women that I've coached over the past 20 plus years. This book is filled with timely and really relevant conversations aimed at helping you unlock your most pressing work-life challenges. Check it out, and I'd love to hear from you about what resonated. And if you feel inspired, please do leave me a review on Amazon because every review helps this book be seen by others that need it. And thank you in advance. I can't wait to share with you more conversations to come. Asian Like Me with Dr. Sohee Jun, the podcast for the modern Asian woman, redefining what it means to thrive. Okay, here's my ask of you. Do not forget to share this episode. Please like it and subscribe. I promise you, you will not regret doing that. And if you really loved the conversation and there were some takeaways for you and some ahas, leave a review. Do not keep this podcast a secret. Remember, we're trying to amplify all the ways that Asian women are playing big. And, your support helps us continue to share the stories that matter and bring insights in the biggest way possible to this community. Okay? See you next time.